Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Human Performance Outliers podcast with Zach Bitter. Welcome, everyone. If you enjoy the show, please consider subscribing on your favorite podcast listening platform and YouTube. You can now also check out the full video episode on X. Please also consider sharing your favorite episodes and leaving a review. If you do that and tag me or send me a screenshot, I will enter you in a monthly raffle for a free 30-minute consultation with me. For full episode details, including notes, timestamps, transcripts, and the show Patreon page, and other ways to support the show, please head over to my website at zachbitter.com. There you can find all my coaching services, including some new offerings for 2025. You can also sign up for my Substack newsletter, where I have been publishing my training journal weekly, as well as other topic-based posts. If you have any questions or feedback, please don't hesitate to reach out to me on my website or at hpopodcast@gmail.com. A big thanks to Element, Delta G Ketones, Currents, and Maui Nui Venison for supporting the podcast. A full description of how I use these products can be found at the end of the episode. Discounts, promotions, and details can also be found in the show notes and at the end of the episode. I did want to talk to you a bit before we kind of dive into the big news, the new news, with the world record news, is you're not just out there running all the time. You are actually, if I'm not mistaken, a middle school special education teacher and coach.
That's correct. Yes, I coach high school, and then I teach at the middle school level.
Awesome. Yeah, that caught my eye. I was a teacher a long time ago at this point, but I did 7th grade special ed for 2 years. And then I did high school. I was dual certified. So when I moved into the high school age group, they kind of had me doing both. I had like a caseload of, I think it was like 15 students, and then did some kind of regular ed classes as well. So it was an exciting days for sure.
Oh yeah, there's never a dull moment, and we're so good, as I'm sure you know from your experience too, at just adapting, like being spontaneous and just taking things as they come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was kind of funny because like when I went to school and decided I wanted to teach, I went in with the idea that I probably wanted to teach either middle school or high school, and my first thought was history and broadfield social studies. So I got like all the history and social studies certifications, like the econ, the poli-sci, the psychology, all that stuff. Then I student taught, but I graduated mid-year, so I didn't really have a good opportunity to get a job at that point. So I just started doing like subbing and long-term subbing. And one thing I learned right away with that is like the jobs that you could get basically every day were oftentimes in the special ed room. So I would just take anything that was open. And I was like, after probably about a month of it, I was like, I think I'd actually want to teach special ed, because it's just like a lot of times small group, you can really make an impact on the students, because you're not just like, okay, I got 45 minutes to touch base with 25 kids, and then it's another group of 25. And then at the end of the day, you've done like minimal inputs probably for over 100 students, versus, okay, I was with this student for a good chunk of the day, and I could actually see that progress, see that growth and stuff like that. So it was really exciting to kind of get that experience. So then I went back to school, got the special ed license, and then I was dual certified, which pretty much gave me access to almost any district in the state when you have the dual certification.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And it is nice that you really get to know your kids so well. Because I do 4th through 8th grade. So I'll have like my 8th graders I've had for 5 years. I know them. I know them. I know their families. I know their cats and dogs. You learn every little aspect of their life. And so it's nice. You get to know them on a deeper level than you do when you are cycling through, like you said, 25 students at a time for an hour.
Yeah. It's an exciting world. I definitely miss teaching. It was kind of one of those things where when I stepped away, I was like, oh, I've got like a couple really good options here, and I know that I'm going to miss whichever one I don't do. And going after the running stuff felt like a shorter term opportunity. So I talked to the principal and was like, hey, I've got this opportunity. And she was like, just chase it. You can always come back. and I did. And I haven't gone back yet, but I always do think about how much fun it was teaching. And that world is a lot of excitement. So I did want to ask you. I think I asked some people that follow me on social media after I was just posting a lot while you were doing the record because it was just so exciting to watch you, because just the way you raced it, it was just like it was kind of like it was that 600 number was just like there the whole time, and there wasn't really any indication that you were gonna slip, and it was just like you're just waiting. We're just like waiting, and like I would check in every few hours and be like, okay, still there, still there, still there, and like I had a lot of people that were following me that some that probably were like loosely even aware of 6 day stuff and are just into sports and fitness and things like that. So like I asked them, I'm like, well, what questions should I ask Meg when she comes on the podcast? So they sent me a whole bunch of stuff, and one of them that stuck out to me because I remember very very clearly how this went for me was just training like during the school year, because it's like one of those
Yeah.
things where you do have time in the summer. I'm not sure maybe you are more involved than I was, but in the summer I had like basically 12 weeks where I could live like a professional athlete. But when I got to the school year part of it, you're on then. There's like not a lot of wiggle room. It's like you get up, I would run, I would go to school. Sometimes I would run again or coach, and then you basically go to bed and you do it all over again. So, how does one prepare for a 6 day world record while teaching full time?
So I definitely have the same summer schedule you're describing, where it's like you have that nice, I think it's 9 weeks off now. They keep kind of shortening it. But it's about 9 weeks where you get to live like a professional athlete. And I live out of my Jeep and I travel around the US and I show up at these races and crew for people in pace and do my own races that I can fit in the summer. But then you're right. When you get to the school year, you're limited on time. And you still have to get the miles in. And I honestly think for me, that's actually been more beneficial to try to squeeze it all in than having all the time to train as a professional athlete. Because I get up in the morning, I run to work, I run commute to work, I do my 7.5, 8 hour workday. I try to squeeze in about an hour run before I go coach track or cross country, whatever season it is. And then when I get done with them, a couple hours later, I go out and I run until pretty much the sun sets. So I'm pulling. I mean, between running and work, I'm probably pulling 12-hour, 13-hour days. So it is like you described, where they are long days. It's a lot of time on the feet. It's a lot of just mental training too. When sometimes in the morning, you want to hit that snooze button and you're like, no, or at least for me, I'm like, I don't feel like I start my day off right if I don't go in with the run. And actually, post 6 days, I haven't been able to run commute to work up until today because I had a real tight knot in my right calf or my right thigh that I've been trying to work out. So today was just a wonderful day because I got to run commute in. So it's about finding that time, but it is
Mm-hmm.
it is very time consuming.
Yeah, it was. I think I was talking to Joe Feegis a long time ago when he set the men's American record for 6 days, just about the 6 day event. And I'm pretty sure it was him who told me this. He said, like, it's really not a question of if you're going to get an injury or something nagging from the experience itself. It's just what is it going to be.
Mhm.
So has that been, I mean, you've done like a lot of long multi-day stuff now. So like, is that kind of the reality where you're going to have something kind of flare up a little bit that you have to sort of manage for at least a little bit afterwards?
Usually, yes. Usually, I do bounce back quickly. So usually, what I have is less than a week, and I'm running again. This one's been a little bit more angry. But yeah, my experience has been also very much the same. Where in the 6 day stuff or in these longer distances, there are things that can pop up. There are things unexpectedly that can pop up. In my first 6 day, on day two, I had an issue with my abductor and my right leg, where my leg was just giving out. And I would have to catch myself on the inside of the track because it felt like I was going to stumble and fall. I couldn't feel my foot for a second. It was the oddest. I've never had it happen since, but it was the oddest situation. And it lasted, I don't know, maybe 12 hours. And then it went away the rest of the race. So there's stuff unexpected that pops up that you just kind of deal with and hope that it's not major, I guess. I wouldn't say always run through an injury, but at that point, I didn't feel like it was getting worse. It just was bad at
Hmm.
the moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like someone like yourself or anyone who's does well at these multi-days, I imagine you just get really good at kind of knowing what things are a problem, but maybe not, like you said, severe enough where it's like if I keep hammering on this, I mean, there's some guesswork, I'm sure, but like you're probably pretty tuned in where you kind of know, like, okay, I'm gonna have to deal with this, but it's not something that's gonna make me quit this race or drop out or something like that.
Most definitely. Yeah. There's a that listening to your body component that a lot of coaches and a lot of athletes talk about all the time. It's much easier said than done, I will say, because some things are guesswork. Also, you're kind of hoping that it's not that bad, but
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. How long is the run commute to work when you do that?
The shortest route I can take is about 2.5 miles. I usually
Okay.
try to go a little bit longer.
Okay. So you're getting, yeah, that was the other thing that I was always trying to decide what was the best setup. I actually had a roommate at the time who was one of my college cross country and track teammates. We ended up at the same school district and shared a house for a while. And he was training for like marathons and sub ultra stuff. But he was putting in quite a bit of miles for that as well. And he would always do his training after school. He wouldn't run before school pretty much ever from what I recall. And I would like usually gravitate to getting up really early if I had to, like 4:30 and just get a good chunk of the training in before the day. And there was a few times kind of usually in the spring when like the weather was maybe a little bit nicer because I was in Wisconsin, so it was like we got quite a bit of variability where I would just start kind of moving things to the second or to after school and do more volume there. Sounds like you maybe have like a little bit more of an even split or skew it towards afterwards.
I definitely have more afterwards. I'm not a big morning runner. I really struggle in the morning. My morning runs even can be challenging at times. I don't think my body, I am a morning person. I don't think my body wakes up to the morning run as well. So I do find like if I'm going to have a harder run or a more challenging run that feels a little bit more like more effort, it's going to be in the morning. So I
Hmm.
do try to put more mileage in the evening time where I'm feeling better and it's just more of a natural rhythm for me to run in the evenings.
Yeah. Yeah, I always wondered about why like the body responds differently with that from one person to the next. Cause like I did track and cross country in high school and college, and those were always like 3 p.m. or right around their practices. So you would think that I would have gravitated to that schedule afterwards, but for whatever reason, I always found myself at the start of the school year doing most of the stuff in the morning, and that would usually be the direction I'd go. But if I would switch it to the afternoon primarily, it after a few weeks I did start to like it, and I would tell myself like, all right, this is the way I'm going to do it. Then summer would happen, and I would go right back to the same formula by the time school started.
That's how I am about my morning runs. You know, we're about to hit summer here. I think I have about a week left, and what's going to happen is my morning runs will be later and later in the morning as summer starts. It'll maybe I'll get up at 7, and then it'll be
Mhm.
okay. Well, I'm still up at 5, but I'm not going to run until 9, and eventually those become 10, 11 in the morning that I get out.
Yeah.
Closer
Do you?
to the
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to
no 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 no
interrupt
no
you.
no. You're fine.
I was just gonna ask, do you look at your training with enough foresight where you're like, all right, I'm gonna do this type of training in the summer because I have a little more flexibility, and then lean on that a little bit during the school year when maybe you have a little more tight window to train?
Not at all. I'll say in the summer I am lucky enough to get in the mountains more, but I don't think that's something that I really think about. It's more I'm traveling, the mountains are right there, so of course I'm gonna go run in them. And of course here in Santa Fe I had just have more time to go to the mountains, but it's nothing like I'm gonna train up for a race, particularly in the summer, and focus on these skills. No, and honestly, most of my training is not any force. I lace up my shoes and go out the door and decide where I want to go that day, and how far I want to go.
Hmm. Yeah, and then do you have days where you're like, okay, I feel good, I'm just gonna run a little faster and try to get speed working, or are you just logging volume basically?
Oh no, I do have days where I will go and I'll try to run a little faster because I'm feeling good and the body is responding well. I won't do, I'm not one who will do speed work if the body is telling me, hey, no, not today. But if I'm on a run and I'm feeling good that day, yeah, yeah, that'll become a speed work day real quick.
It
It's
sounds
not
like
very
you and Courtney
structured.
DeWalter. Okay, yeah, it sounds like you and Courtney DeWalter kind of have a similar approach where it's like, hey, I'm gonna run a lot, but I'm just gonna if I feel good, I'll run faster. If I don't, I'll run slower. And then clearly there's a path forward to that because both of you, I mean, you two, you could make an argument you two are like two of the best ultra runners in the world on the women's side of the sport. So yeah, it's I always I laugh about it just because like the sport is like growing a lot and we're seeing a lot more professionalization and like philosophies about what's the right way to train or who's doing it right, who's doing it wrong, and all that sort of stuff that kind of gets into the weeds with it. But um we still see quite a wide range of stuff, and it's really hard to argue against an approach when someone like yourself goes and runs 603 miles in 6 days. And it probably opens up the conversation around like we're sort of trying to like identify a process and apply it to something that would be similar to us trying to apply a similar process to a bunch of different sports when we get into kind of what entails running, say, like a 50 miler in the mountains versus a 6 day on the track and things like that.
Right. There's so many different components, I think, to ultra running, right? There's different races, different trains, different styles that when we're looking at actually training for an ultra run, it is very different for each one. Like a marathon training, you're training for a marathon, there's kind of like a block, right?
Hmm.
It's been studied. There's a traditional block, and this is kind of the best way to train for X, Y, and Z marathon. But when you're training for an ultra, there's so many different variables that you're looking at, even within distances. If we're talking about 100K or 100 miler, like the conditions, the altitude, the terrain, the weather. I mean, there's so many different aspects that go into training that I think it makes it hard to find more of a cookie cutter method when it comes to ultra running. It's so individual.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I'd be curious too, because like you're where you live, you kind of have access to a lot of variety of terrain. It sounds like you do get out on the trails in the mountains and things like that. Do you find that that's helpful in terms of just kind of maintaining durability on the more flatter stuff and just having some variety in there to so you're not just kind of hammering the same thing over and over again?
I think it is. I think it's beneficial physically, but I think more so for me, it's beneficial mentally. The roads become very monotonous. I love mountain running, and so when I'm able to get the time to like get out on the trails and climb up the mountains, get on the rocky terrain, stream crossings, and so on, it's also kind of a heart day, of running where I'm just all in. Like it doesn't matter the pace, it doesn't matter this like the speed, how quick I make it to the mountaintop, if I even make it to the mountaintop. It's just a day where I can just love every minute and not think of anything.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely miss that about Phoenix. We've been in Austin now for a little over 3 years, and there's good running in Austin too, but Phoenix had everything. Like if I wanted flat canal path, you could run forever on that. Obviously, there was tracks everywhere, and then there was all these like mountain preserves in town that you could run out on the trails. And if you wanted to get on a bunch of mountainous stuff, you just go a little bit out of town and or up to Flagstaff or something like that. So I can appreciate that whole process of just yeah, the physical aspect of having variability is good, I think. But then I always found if I would target, say, flat track 100 miler or just a flat 100 miler in general for too long, I would start to kind of lose a little bit of that like last edge that is required to kind of hit a PR when you've done it a few times already, or just to be motivated and excited to do it as much as you were the first time. And then I would usually just sign up for a trail race and spend some time doing that for a while and then come back to it and be like, okay, now I'm ready to do this again.
Yes, yes, and I agree entirely. Like it's beneficial to do both. When I get sick of the roads and I hop on the trails, like I'm happy to be on the trails. When I get not that I really get sick of the trails, but when I need something different, need to feel fast, let's say, and I hop
Yeah.
on the roads, like I just I it's fun to bounce back and forth. I really enjoy it.
Just a quick reminder that Delta G ketones is my go-to exogenous ketone source. You can get 20% off at deltagketones.com when you use promo code BITTER20. Check out my full description of how I use Delta G ketones at the end of the episode. Are you targeting a certain amount of volume you're trying to hit with your training, or is that a little more kind of, I'm guessing you just end up hitting probably a minimum, but do you think of it through that lens at all of like I want to make sure I log X number of hours per week or anything like that?
So through the years of training, I've kind of found like my sweet spot. So anywhere from like 90 to 110 miles is kind of my sweet spot when I'm training up for a race. Anything more is usually not beneficial. I end up too fatigued, right, to train the following weeks. And anything less, I kind of feel sluggish. So, like for me, I've kind of found my sweet spot, and I try to stay there when I'm training for a race. If not, it's whatever, kind of wherever I fall that week.
Hmm.
So yes, I guess I would say yes. Weekly mileage is something that I do consider because my muscles, my tendons, my ligament, everything has to take that beating in order to withstand the duration or distance of the upcoming race.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting because there's like a floor where you kind of you don't really want to go below that, and there's gonna be some individuality here, but yeah, like you said, you're out there for a 6 day, you're out there for 6 days, and that's a lot of pounding. So if you can have that cumulative 100-ish mile training weeks, that's probably what's going to keep that stuff durable and ready to kind of perform on it. But yeah, you don't want to cross over that too. There's that like point where people, I think people who've run long enough, they finally get to that point where they see a spot where like, okay, this spot is kind of where thin ice starts. And then beyond that, I'm just not doing myself any favors. I'm getting miserable. I'm getting injured. I'm getting fatigued. The quality's dropping. And then you just start to learn like, all right, it more isn't necessarily better.
Right. Right, exactly. And maybe and that's also considering like all those other aspects of life, right? Like if I was a professional athlete doing this full time, maybe I could withhold like 120, 130-mile weeks, 140, but I'm not. I have other things that I do on a day-to-day basis and other responsibilities. And so if I don't quite hit, even 90, I'm not going to beat myself up over that. That's just life. Um,
Hmm.
so but I do think these little aspects also that the rest of our lives play a role in what we should be getting or what works best for the individual on a weekly basis.
Yeah, and you touched on this earlier too, and I definitely want to probe a little bit here because I it's something I've been really interested in is y- there's the mental side of the sport, and when you get into the 6 day stuff or the multi-day stuff, it just seems like that's, I mean, it's just a long time to be on and be focused. So there's like that mental training of just knowing like you can wrap your head around just being on point for 12, 13, 14 hours in a day. So you can't really do the activity that long on a regular basis, maybe in a week, but like go out and just do like 14 hours of running and training is going to be counterproductive. So physically, you get what you need in a couple hours in most cases, but how do you train the mind to be able to tolerate that longer stuff? And I always wonder about that with the professionalization of the sport too, is are we going to start seeing people looking for things or finding they're missing things when they don't have like this block of obligation that kind of forces their mind to stay on and train their brain to be focused for longer periods of time and build up that sort of durability and robustness of just your mental focus side of things?
I think for me is I had a personal goal. I always have a personal goal. It doesn't matter what other people are doing at the race. It's what I want to come and bring to the table. And so that's my focus going in. And you can break any race down into smaller blocks, whether you're running a 50K or you're running a 6 day. Like you can break that race into smaller blocks, set mini goals for yourself. Um, Whatever, like for me, one of my major goals for the 6 day race was to really have a strong day two. I blew by day two in my first 6 day race. I had poor mileage, a poor day, lots of sleep, lots of whining and complaining. And I said, my big thing, like my first goal of this race is to have a strong day two. I know I can do day one. Let's focus on day two. And so all of those little goals along the way, they make a difference in maintaining that focus over the 6 days. Because if you can check one of those off as you're going along, it just empowers you even more.
Hmm. Yeah, I always explain this to my coaching clients. It's like use the things you have in your life to your advantage, and the more intuitive it becomes, the easier it's going to be able to do that without burning a bunch of mental bandwidth during the race. So, like, we all get like projects and like to-do lists essentially in life, and over time you start realizing if it's something that's larger and has multiple steps to it, you know what those steps are, but you don't start thinking about that last step when you're on the first one because you know you got to get the first step done first anyway. And we just get good at doing that. And if you can apply that to the race the same way, you're really leveraging something you've probably been practicing for years, if not decades. So I always kind of think like, where can I like train my brain to help me do the things in the race that are going to be hard for me to actually practice in training to that same degree.
Most definitely, yes. And having those little things is important, like those little goals along the way.
Hmm. Yeah. So going into the 6 day this time, was 600 miles a number you were considering, or was it something where you were like, hey, I'm gonna just go for the world record here. We'll worry about anything else as it comes, or was there reason for you to believe that 600 was something that you were going to be able to achieve?
So I got to tell you, the first 6 day I did going into the dome, very first 6 day, like not even a track runner, don't have a track background. I think I ran on a track a handful of times before going to the dome. And I go into the dome and I'm like, I'm going to hit 600 miles. Like I come in and I'm like, this is what I'm going for. This is exactly what I want. And I knew, like, I didn't go in thinking, this is gonna be easy, or I'm gonna get it on the first try, but I went in going, this is my goal for 6 days. Like this is exactly what I want to do. I may not get it this time, but this is what I'm working towards. And I didn't get it. The first time I did like 526 miles, had a ton of learning curves, like bunches, like day two was a bad day. I learned about sleep, learned not to sleep on the floor because if your air mattress deflates, you can't get up, all of these little tidbits here and there. Um, it was just a huge learning curve. So then I have all this knowledge and I'm going into 6 days in France and I still have that same goal because, right, I didn't get it the first time and I had set this and I want it. And it was more important to me to get 600 than it was the world record. Like I wanted that 600-mile mark. And even if another woman had done 620, I just wanted 600, you know? So going into this one, I applied. My husband's crewing. He was crewing me at my first 6 days, so we both had that learning curve, and we applied what we had learned from that first 6 day. We used kind of a very similar model and tweaked it to make those little accommodations, and we went after 600 again. I mean that was the goal from the very very start.
Did you have it broken down to like I want to hit this many number of miles on each of the days, or was that kind of a looser target?
That was a much looser target. Yeah. That was a much looser target. I knew I needed a very strong day one, just because of fatigue over time. And then also knowing that later on in the race I would need a bit more sleep here and there, to maintain. So I knew I needed a stronger day one. And then the focusing on days two and three and improving those mileage there. And I knew based on the dome, I had had a really poor start to my race and a very strong finish. So I had that working in my favor, knowing if I could hold on while I was fresh in the race and have a good first 3 days, I could rely on my experience, hopefully, and hold on to the last three also.
Hmm. Yeah, I was thinking about that too, because it's like there's all sorts of conversation. I've dove deep into kind of like how should you pace an ultra marathon, and I think this probably varies to some degree from one person to the next, but then also from one event to the next. But when you get into something like a 6 day where you know there's going to be some sleep component that allows you to go further than you would if you didn't sleep at all, you sort of do have that little bit of extra buffer on day one because you're going in there rested versus say like, day 3 or day 4 where some of that 24-hour cycle has to be rest and sleep and making it sustainable. Is that another reason why you kind of front load a little bit of the miles for an event like a 6 day, in your opinion?
Somewhat. Pace is still comfortable. It's comfortably fun on the first day, but yes, I am out there longer on day one than I am on day 3 or 4 because yeah, sleep does become a thing, and your body is fighting you for its normal its normal circadian rhythm.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing to me?
Yes, exactly. Oh, and especially early on, it really, I find for me, like night two, it's really, really battling, trying to get me to sleep. Like I said, I fell asleep while running, on the second night, and that's the only night that that happened. So it really, it becomes a quite a battle early on. And then eventually it's almost like it gives up. Um, Time is almost becomes irrelevant later on in the race.
Yeah, that's been something that I've been told a bunch of times with multi-day stuff. I've had quite a few like runners who've done things like the Transcon or Appalachian Trail and things like that, and they've said sort of that same thing where it's like you kind of hit those first few days can sort of be this weird kind of like drop down where your mind sort of is playing weird games with you where it's still trying to get you to give up or still trying to talk some sense into you probably is the better way to put it. And and then eventually it kind of says, okay, well, this is the reality. Let's just make do with it. And I found that really interesting too, because it's like you get this like mindset in these races sometimes, I think, where you start to see like this dip in energy or this dip or this accumulation of fatigue. And the first thought is always like, well, if this continues linearly, there's just no way I'm gonna be able to sustain this. You start thinking too far ahead. And then eventually that kind of misery sort of just plateaus a little bit. And it's like, okay, I can tolerate this if it doesn't get worse. It, is there a lot of ebb and flow after that point for you, or is it like, do you feel great at some point on like day 5 and just like, okay, I'm gonna ride this while it lasts, or is it kind of just like managing like suboptimal as best you can?
Oh no, there's definitely some random great, like you feel wonderful moments. You feel like you can run forever, and nothing's gonna stop you. I remember at some point thinking, you know what? If they close the course, I wonder if I can just keep going to 1,000 kilometers. You know, I wonder if
Yeah.
they'll like keep counting. And it was some point on day five. You know, I was like, I bet they'll let me keep going. But it's real funny how the mind does go in and out of, okay, I don't know if I can do this anymore, to I could do this forever. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, it's the runner's high, and you can have multiple ones in the 6 day. But you're right in the sense of like your mind starts to try to kind of make you stop. Um, you're not going to quite make it. Early on, especially, I find like crew is really important in that sense. To kind Day two, I was asking, well, what's my pace? What's my pace? Because I was worried I was falling off. I was real worried about day two, and I was worried I was falling off pace. And I kept running by my crew asking, am I okay? Am I good? I can't see the time clock. I don't know where I'm at. And they kept saying, well, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. And I'm like, well, what does fine mean? Does fine mean I'm
Yeah.
okay? Does fine mean I'm too slow? Does fine mean you're just telling me I'm fine? Like, I was convinced they were lying to me. So your mind does these crazy things where it's just, even at sometimes it seems like you're running in quicksand, like you're not going anywhere. Um, but yet you're cruising at a decent pace. So
Hmm.
it tries to trick you in every way it possibly can.
Yeah. Yeah, and are you like one question I've got no perception of what it's like to be out there that long, but one question I'll get from folks just about like ultra races, especially the more monotonous ones, like if I do like a track 100 miler, someone will ask me, "Well, what are you thinking about the whole time?" And I never have a great answer. I feel like it's always like I don't know because when you get into these like controlled type of settings, either I'm like turning my memory off from it or getting into like some sort of like rhythm or flow where whatever was passing through my mind or that I'm thinking of in the moment is just like kind of out one ear or in one ear and out the other sort of type of thing and I don't recall it afterwards or sometimes I mean there'll always be like a few things I distinctly remember and then I'm just asking myself afterwards was I just thinking about that the whole time on repeat or was that just what I recalled and things like that so what's it like for 6 days is there like things that stand out and like a bunch of stuff that you're like I wish I remembered what I was thinking about for that 12 hours on day 3 or
I if somebody asked me what I was thinking about the whole time, I don't know. I really couldn't tell you either. It's almost like you get in a meditative tunnel.
Mhm.
This is the only world that exists at that point. One of the crews on day 5 left with their backpack to go to the grocery store to get things. And I looked at him like, "You're going on an adventure," because you
Yeah.
forget that anything like it. I had forgotten a grocery store even existed. What existed to me was this loop that I was doing, and sometimes you're thinking of, oh, I wonder how so and so is doing at that tent that I'm just passing. I haven't seen
Yeah.
them in a while. I wonder if they're sleeping. I wish I was sleeping. Or, I wonder what they're like. At one point, there was a gentleman who had Fanta, and I'm like, that sounds delicious. So I spent a few loops until I remembered to tell my crew I wanted Fanta. It's like these random thoughts sometimes. But I don't. It really does become a meditative state because it is so repetitive. You learn every speed bump, every little crack in the track, yeah, very monotonous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
Is
sounds
it
miserable, but it's not.
right? Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying too, because you sort of like build this alternate world for a period of time that you're existing in that's separate from the real one. And then you finish and you're back in the real one and you're just trying to like how do I reconnect to that other one that I was in and explain what was happening there. And it's really difficult to do. You almost just wish like the person who's asking the questions could just get in your head and dig it out of there themselves.
Yes. Yes, because I don't know the answer either.
Okay, good. I'm not going crazy then.
No.
I'm glad to hear that. What is that like coming back afterwards? Is it really difficult for a few days to sort of just reconnect with everything? Uh, does it, I'm guessing it just feels very distant.
It does, and honestly, I experienced it after Biggs, and I have experienced it after this one too. And even after the dome, I'll say it's kind of depressing. I
Hmm.
mean, it's exciting, but it's also I don't know why I have reacted this way, but I have a few days where it's just kind of sad. Sad that I'm not on the track. Sad that I'm not with the people I just spent 6 days with, and we experienced all this stuff with. It's a shock almost to go back into reality, and then of course you readjust and life returns to normal and everything's fine, but it does take a few days, and I've actually experienced like that post race depression after these longer distances.
Just a quick reminder that Element Electrolytes is my go to electrolyte source. They are offering a free sample pack with purchase for all HPO listeners at drinklmnt.com/HPO. They also just launched a new flavor, lemonade. Check it out risk free with their 30-day money back guarantee. Also, check out my full description of how I use Element at the end of the episode.
The way I always think about it is when I was a kid, my family would do every other year we'd have this family reunion where my dad's side of the family was big. He had 7 brothers and sisters. So they all had a bunch of kids. So I had like over 30 cousins on that side. And we'd go up to this kind of camp there's like these cabins and this place up north in Wisconsin. And for a week, that whole side of the family would just hang out. And then when it was over, we go back, it was just like it felt like we were gone for years. And then it was like I'm going back to like something completely different. And it's like, yeah, I was just there 7 days ago. Like, it wasn't that long ago, but for whatever reason, just that reintroduction to the thing that should feel normal is feels awkward.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so.
So
Fair.
yeah,
And
that
well, and then on top of being done with your normal routine for 6 days or whatnot, you also have just all the post race healing happening too, which um, the night sweats or the odd sleeping hours, and like you would think you would crash, but my experience has been I can't crash after a race for about 12 hours at least. And then it's
mhm.
only like limited sleep for a few hours at a time. Um,
Yeah,
so
you
there's
would
all
think
this readjustment.
for sure. Yeah, you'd think you would just be able to pass out for like 24 hours straight and sort of reset. But yeah, the body has other minds at that. You've already convinced it through day two that you're doing crazy stuff, and then it's in that world versus the normal world.
Yes. Yes. It's like, well, let's just, if we're going to do this, let's just keep going.
Yeah.
It really, it doesn't know when to stop. And it honestly takes about a week to return like to normal sleep schedule, and even eating, everything takes at least a week, if not longer.
hmm Yeah, what is the fueling strategy that you use for a 6 day? Are you looking at it through the lens of I know I'm going to need to eat a lot, but I'm also going to probably need to respond to what my body's asking for or what I'm craving, or do you have a pretty specific set of things that you tend to focus on?
Um, in a 6 day, protein intake is extremely important because of the number of hours that you're out there, and days, right? So I really focus on getting protein in, especially with those main meals, because I still try to keep those three main meals of some sort in there, along with a midnight snack. But so the protein is extremely important, but the rest kind of boils down to like whatever my body is craving. So can be anything from gummy bears to pasta to I'll do scrambled eggs, chips, um, lots of liquid calories in multiple forms. Um, so it's pretty much whatever, the free
Yeah.
for all.
And is there any calculations you're doing to make sure you're getting in enough, or is it sort of just I'm going to eat as much as I can tolerate and then see how that goes? I know like with the shorter ultras, it's gotten to a point where now people are like, okay, I need to get like X number of grams of carbohydrate per hour, and people are kind of building these plans around that strategy. Is it a little more loose for something like this where you're probably not going to stay on top of calorie? My guess is you lose weight during these things. So, uh, like, at what point do you? Yeah, I guess maybe just did you put any thought into that, or is it just like I know I need to eat, so I'm going to try to eat as often as I can and not worry about any sort of totals or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm definitely, even in a 50K, not a mathematical runner. So I am just eating as I feel like eating, knowing that I need to take in more. So the one thing I do in these is I make sure I have a larger meal before I go down to sleep. So I'm getting so a bit more calories than you would if you were like continuously running, and getting them hopefully more well digested and put to good use. But no, I don't calculate anything. We literally, our calculation is I'm going to hand you a handful of something. I'll give you two options. I'm going to give you a handful of something, something salty, something sweet, every 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and you just have to grab one. And that's literally my husband and I, our
Yeah.
calculation on calories.
It would be awesome if there was an insane amount of money in the sport to the degree where you could have someone there that was just tracking that stuff for you.
We did have, so my first 6 day, we had an amazing couple, Jeff and Joanne, who came out to help crew, because we weren't sure what that was going to look like. And Jeff sat there and just calculated. He wrote down how much of everything I ate, and the estimated calories. And he was so we have a log actually from my first 6 day, on day 2, day 4, and day 5, and day 6, I think, of what I was eating, which was just a great reference going into this one to look back on to see how often I ate and how much I ate.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. Because even if it's a loose target from there, at least you kind of have like an idea of like this is the amount of volume of food that should be going to you and not coming back versus and then your crew can maybe adjust if you're not taking in as much with that. That's interesting. Yeah, that'd be cool. Do you have like a blog or anything where you publish that stuff too?
No, no, I haven't.
People are going to be asking for that.
Well, just fair warning, it's gonna have Oreos and gummy bears and bunches of Fritos.
It's gonna look like one of your students' like sleepover parties or something like that
Oh,
with just a bunch
definitely.
of yeah.
Got the candy bowl and
Yeah, it is. I do remember when I had Pete Kostelnick on to talk about his Transcon record. He had one of his crew chief was very dialed into the nutrition side of things, and she had it all kind of pre-planned and just knew kind of like through this section you need to make sure you get this many calories in. So I think his was like something in the neighborhood of like right around 10,000 calories a day. But you start getting into that sort of stuff where Pete's out there for 6 weeks, then I think you maybe have to be a little bit more calculated with it, perhaps. But 6 days, it sounds silly to say this, but 6 days is like you can still go a long way on a bit of a deficit, I would imagine, before trouble starts coming your way.
right. And you can kind of like in any race, you can kind of feel that deficit coming. And in the 6 day, you do have enough time to go, ooh, I feel like I'm kind of starting to bonk here. I'm not feeling great. I'm gonna step off the track for a minute. I'm gonna take in some good calories. I'm gonna drink some things and I'm gonna get back out there. So in a 50K where you might just have to keep going and kind of push through and try to get some chews down or gels or whatever to make it to the end. And the 6 day, you can kind of troubleshoot. You can take those extra few minutes, which will benefit you in the long run.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, is it similar with hydration? Are you just sort of drinking to thirst then, or are you trying to get in a certain amount of fluid when you're out there to make sure that you don't get dehydrated and have to dig yourself out of that hole?
Yeah, I'm really horrible about hydration. I'm a runner even when I'm training who will go out without a water bottle and do a 20-mile run and
Okay.
think nothing of it. So I will say this is not my strong suit at all. My husband yells at me all the time. He'll hand me the water bottle. I'll do my half a loop. I'll finish maybe half of the handheld at most, and then I won't pick it up for another 30 or 45 minutes. And he's going, it's hot. You're out here for 6 days. You need to be drinking. So it's something I could really improve upon. It is definitely a weakness of mine that I think if I could get my hydration and my electrolyte intake a little bit more balanced, I could improve in that area because the heat we had days 4 through 5, or days 2 through 5 were nothing to mess with at all. You didn't want to get behind out there.
Yeah, that's a whole topic in and of itself too, is like with a single day ultra, assuming it's not the Pettit Center, where that's kind of a nice thing about the Pettit Center is you know exactly what you're into for the whole time. But yeah, you have not just changes in heat from day to night, you could have like extreme days versus non-extreme days. Or if I remember right, you got some rain even, I think, didn't you, during this event? So you have to
Yeah.
know what to do in that and respond to that. So for me, it's part of it's like obviously you don't want to get like really terrible weather, but to some degree, when it rained, was it like, hey, this is kind of something different?
Not really because it rained on day 1.
Okay.
So it rained within the first 5, 6 hours of the race, and the course flooded, and our shoes were
Oh,
soaked. And of course, this is in France, so I only brought 2 pairs of shoes. So I'm going, okay, I hope this doesn't do it the whole time because we'll be using the dryers. And um, and then it was hot, like it was hot until day 6. Day 6 in the morning, the last 8 hours is when the storms came in. So we really kind of bookended with storms, but the whole rest of the time, the weather was clear and hot.
Okay,
At
interesting.
nights, people said it got cold. I tend to run very hot, and never had to put anything more than a short sleeve on. I was still in shorts, and yeah, I didn't think the nights got very cold at all. But the days were extremely hot.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, the more I hear you talk about this, the more I think like, man, I wonder how far you go in optimal conditions with that performance or how far you will go in the future.
I don't know if I would thrive as much in optimal conditions, only because part of the fun of it is like those adverse conditions coming in. I think mentally it's a little bit of a relief to have something different,
Mhm.
um, and rather than the same. I don't know. Maybe I'll try the dome again.
Yeah. I was gonna say you kind of have two very like polarizing experiences with the dome versus France's. The dome obviously that's exactly 55 degrees the entire time and the lights are the same and very little things change from an environmental standpoint. So, yeah, it's weird. You think of optimization as like controlled, but your mind may not respond the same way to that. And even if it's something where it's like it's raining now, it's not going to rain the whole time, presumably. So you have something to look forward to in the sense that okay, I'm just going to look forward to when this rain stops versus trying to think about day 5 on day 1 and things like that.
Yeah, and I will say I live in Santa Fe, so when the rain came, both times it was very welcome, because we don't have a lot of rain here. It's not very often I get to run in the rain, so
Yeah.
I did actually appreciate that until the second time the rain came and it got cold. Then I didn't appreciate it as much, but it is nice to know you have these conditions and you go through them and then something else is coming, just like you have the days, and then the sun will set, it'll become night. Well, at the dome you don't have that. And I remember at the dome trying to like just getting really tired in the middle of the day, so I would step outside in the mornings to wake myself up, to let myself know it was sunrise, it was daytime, and then I would go back into the dome and continue running. um, but you don't have to worry about that on an outdoor
Yeah.
event.
That's interesting too. And yeah, someone told me I was going to ask you about this. They said you wore the same pair of shoes the entire time. Is that true or did you have more than one pair?
I wore a black pair of R1s through the rain. So on day one, from noon until probably 8 or 9 p.m., I wore one pair of shoes. And then after the rain stopped, the course had cleared, it had drained. I switched into a white pair of R1s and wore those till the end of the race.
Okay, so you had two pairs for 603 months. That's a great plug for Mount Coast that you were able to put basically exhaust two pairs of shoes probably in the by at the end of it. But they held up well. Like I've been doing shoe reviews this year, and Mount Coast sent me all three of their originals. And that R1, like I knew they had I kind of had an idea from just talking to them what they were trying to do with that product line. And my first experience with it was just like I can I see what they're doing here. Like the that shoes like it's got this like really unique type of stability that would just in my from what I would imagine would just be like a really welcome place to be putting your foot over and over again if you're out there for multiple days. It sort of kind of cradles your foot in a way where guys because we're thinking like feet have to be like one of the bigger concerns for something like this I would imagine. So having the right shoe for the job could be the difference between having a performance like you did or having to deal with something for days in some cases probably that end up taking quite a few miles off the end total.
Right, right. And yeah, I wore Mount Coast for my first 6 days also, and did most of the miles in a single pair. I think like 480 or so. And that's before I had any experience with them. I just didn't have a shoe for the race. And they had sent me this pair and they said, hey, these are meant for long distances. These are meant for ultra runners. I'm like, this is great because I don't know what
Yeah.
I'm going to wear for this race. And they ended up, I thought for sure, I started in them. I thought for sure I would switch them out. And I did, but only for maybe like 10, 15 miles at a time, and then I would switch right back into them, because for me, nothing felt as good on my feet as they did. And so I've done all of my distance races in them since.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think like when people think of ultra marathons, I think one of the questions I often get is like, should I change my shoes? Or sometimes it's like, when should I change my shoes? Should I have like multiple pairs spread out over a course to switch into? And I usually tell people it's like, like it's good to probably have that option, but if your feet are feeling good because you found a shoe that works really well for the course or the train or whatever you're on, and with your gait pattern and everything that's going on, I don't know that like changing just for the sake of changing it makes sense. If you have something that's bothering your foot and the shoe can fix it, then yeah, that's a great. Or like in a situation like you had where it goes from wet to dry, and by switching out the wet pair, you're in dry shoes and they're not just going to get wet again. Those sort of situations I think make a ton of sense.
Right. Right. Or even later feeling an overuse injury, or overuse something coming on. Like sometimes just switching the shoe can completely make the difference.
Hmm. Yeah, I was wondering if you had maybe like switched from the R1 to like the P1 for that reason, just because there was a little bit different feel in those two models. If you were ever like, all right, I just want a different experience for a little while, maybe load your foot a little differently. But it sounds like you just found comfort in that R1 for 6 straight days.
I did just right in the R1s.
Did you have any issues with blistering or anything like that you had to sort of manage along the way?
I had one blister. I had one blister the whole time, and it was from the first day when our feet got wet. It wasn't even the shoe; it was toes, how they tuck
Yeah.
under, and yeah. So just one,
Yeah, there are
and
some
usually my
blisters.
feet hold up pretty well.
Okay, so that's a strength of yours. Probably one of the reasons why you're good at these long stuff. But yeah, sometimes blisters are just gonna, it doesn't matter what the shoe is. It's just like you said, like your toes are gonna rub against each other, and then you get the wet environment, and that just complicates things a little bit on top of it. But um, okay, that's cool. Yeah, I saw that someone said like, I think she wore the same pair the whole time, and I was like, okay, I got to ask about that. And two shoes in my mind is impressive for 603 miles of running. Um, but yeah, interesting stuff. I did want to kind of go back to what we were talking before about sleep, because one thing I always think about is it worth planning sleep to have some structure there where you think like, okay, I'm going to try to take a nap at this point, like have a benchmark to look forward to. But the other part of me thinks like your body may not be receptive of that. And I think the worst scenario in my mind would be, all right, I plan to take a nap at say 2 p.m. and then I go lay down. I just lay there and don't fall asleep. And then you feel like you wasted time. So are you doing that pretty intuitively too, where it's like, okay, I feel like I could lay down, take a nap anywhere, and that's how you're planning it? Or how is that kind of structured?
So I kind of learned from my first 6 day when I tried to push to 3 a.m. To get more miles. I learned that your body does kind of tell you this is when you need to sleep. Um, so at this one, I went in and said, okay, I'm gonna push through the night until the point where the first night till the point where I can go to sleep. And the point where I went to sleep was midnight for me on the first night. And so I kind of tried to keep that 12-hour cycle of sleep. So midnight, noon. I would go down for a certain amount of time, and that was predetermined by myself and my crew of how long I needed to go down for. And then we would also discuss it. And some of them ended up being shorter than planned. Some of them ended up being longer just based on how hot it was outside, getting out of the heat for a little bit, or how fatigued I was. But I don't think there's no benefit in lying down if you're not gonna sleep. And there were a couple of times that I did go in at midnight and not. It took me I was too wound up
Hmm.
to go to sleep. So I probably lost a few miles there staring at the ceiling instead of doing them on course. But it's really hard to tell because sometimes you you lay down and you're out instantly, and you don't think that's going to happen either.
Mm-hmm.
So
Just a quick reminder that Currents is a product I use pre-workout and during events to help with blood flow, recovery, and fat oxidation. Check out currenzusa.com. That's currenzusa.com to see the 40 plus studies they have and use promo code BITTER20DEAL for 20% off your first purchase. Full description of how I use Currents at the end of the episode.
Yeah, I always wonder about like just the signs your body sends you to, because it's like it probably wants sleep, but like we were talking about with after the race, you don't just pass out and fall asleep for a full day or anything like that. So sometimes I wonder if it's like the fatigue is there and you're just craving stopping for one reason, well, for obvious reasons, I guess, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna fall asleep. So you think like, okay, I could lay down and take a nap, and then you lay down and you're like, okay, you gave your body what it thought it wanted in the moment, which is just to stop the behavior of moving forward. And yeah, that one is one where I always think like when I do a multi-day for the first time, like it's going to be an experience. I have to try to learn a little bit on the fly at least about how to navigate that side of things.
Well, and there were some times that I was out there and my body was wanting sleep badly, and like you're saying, it really just wanted to stop for a minute. It just wanted not to be running, and so my solution was to pull off the track, take a 5 minute nap, sitting up in a chair, and get up and get going again. And a lot of times that's all it needed. It was just a quick reset. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do that too often, but I did find those to be helpful when I got to the point of just be really, really tired.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually an interesting aspect to ultras in general too, is when you're out there, even if you're in a bit of a flow, there is this like level of focus that just doesn't get interrupted. That is required, I guess, to move forward. Because I've noticed this in like in track events in the past where I'll pull off to use the bathroom real quick, and when I go back out there, it's like super refreshing. I was like, oh, I just needed to, for like 30 seconds, completely be able to disassociate from the act of making another loop, making another loop. I just needed to turn that off momentarily. And then when you go back on there, it's almost like you kind of reset that. And really, you didn't do any resting for the most part, but you just gave yourself that little bit of a mental break, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that can also be a very dangerous game too.
Yeah. You start taking it too often. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Or you don't go
I've
back
had
out.
that
Yeah.
experience. I speak from experience there where, oh, I have to use the bathroom. I'm just going to take a couple.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're going to the bathroom every 15 minutes after a while.
Right.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Um, there was another question. Oh, you know what I was going to ask you about was is caffeine, because obviously that's like a super potent performance boosting piece of the equation here, but it's also something where there is a margin of diminishing returns. So were you following any sort of structure with that, or was it sort of like I'm going to have this in, or maybe I should just ask, do you, some people don't respond to caffeine. Do you respond to caffeine?
Oh, I completely respond to
Okay.
caffeine. Yeah, I don't drink a lot of caffeine on a day-to-day basis. So when I do in an ultra, yeah, it's a pretty significant response.
Okay, cool. And
Yeah.
are you trying to plan that for certain parts of the day? Because I would imagine like you probably want to break through some sleep fatigue and stack some miles, but then at a certain point, are you ever thinking like maybe I won't take caffeine now because we're getting to a point that would maybe make sense to take a nap and I don't want to like interrupt that by introducing caffeine?
Definitely, definitely. As we get closer to those sleep points, I'm avoiding caffeine a couple hours before. Um, I try to not take, and I don't. I think I made it to about maybe 40 hours this time before taking caffeine. I try to go into day two or day three, like late day two, early day three, before I even introduce caffeine into the equation. I know this one was a little bit earlier than I normally do. Um, and then because when she started, there's a sort of maintenance thing going on there too. Um, So minimal amounts. We're talking an energy drink is normally my go-to. I have a Monster or a Celsius or something sitting on the table, and I take a couple swigs, and then I'm off. So it's minimal amounts, luckily, to keep it going. It just becomes more frequent as time goes on.
Hmm. Yeah, that is always an interesting because a lot of the caffeine research is done with like a performance dose of like 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. But I always tell like my ultra running clients and people are asking about it, just like you don't necessarily want a performance dose when you're going slow forever. Like
Yeah.
you probably want just enough to keep you focused and then not feel like you're shot out of a cannon and find yourself in a situation where you feel great for, you know, an hour and then all of a sudden feel miserable after that. So I'm always interested in the way people kind of leverage that side of things.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely for the smaller amounts. And then of course increasing in frequency as the race goes on. And I don't even know honestly if those smaller amounts make that much of a difference, like caffeine dose wise, as much as they do maybe placebo effect, in the
Sure.
fact that you're tasting this and it's energy, it's caffeine. And it also tastes different than water, which is just wonderful. You get like the bubbly, and you get
Yeah.
it's just a nice little reprieve from everything that you've been doing. So it might be a little bit of that too, a little placebo.
Yeah, that's a great point. And are you getting a lot of palate fatigue for certain things after a while where you're just like, I can't have that anymore?
It goes through cycles. So I'll go through where I want something for a good 36 hours or something, and then I'll avoid it for 24, and suddenly I'll bring it back up again. So my poor crew always has to kind of be ready with that item in the on the back burner. And then sometimes, where my husband will make a joke that I just think you go out there and you come up with the most random things you possibly can come up with, and we don't have it, but you want to see me, run around to try to get it made. So
Yeah, that is the whole other side of it too, is like to do these things optimally, you need a crew. And it's like that crew's there for 6 days too. And, or, I mean, was your husband there the whole time? I'm guessing just like, I'm sure he's taking naps as he can as well. But how does that work? Did you have more than one person out there helping out, or was it just your husband um, trying to fight off sleep fatigue as best he can the whole time?
so pretty much my husband crewed the whole time. He was able to take naps because they were sharing, with another crew. They were sharing a porch. So the other crew member would jump in when he would take a nap, and vice versa. So sometimes my crew, my husband Joe, would be crewing two people at a time, just so that they both got sleep. However, I will say, is horrible about getting sleep in these things. Day 5, I had more sleep than he did. I'm positive of that. And he was exhausted. Like,
Hmm.
he was probably more fatigued than I was running all the miles. And I think it's because the crew has to go through so much mental stuff on top of just the physical aspect of running. Like, we're doing the running part, but they're trying to pre-plan all this, prepare the food, keep us moving, figure out what we need. Because by that, especially later in the race, like, most of us are not thinking completely clearly, and so there are brains too at that point in
Hmm.
time.
Yeah, crewing is such an interesting experience because, especially if it's someone like your husband, like Joe, like he's obviously got like, there's a whole nother element there where like he's concerned for you. Not that other crews aren't, but there's like a whole nother level of attachment. I know like when I crew for Nicole, and I'm sure when she crews for me too, it's like it's almost worse because you have all the stress and anxiety, but you don't have any of the feedback other than what they tell you. But like when I'm out there running, like I know when I feel bad, I know when I feel good, and then I respond to that. But when Nicole is coming in, I'm like, does she feel good? Is she saying she feels good and doesn't feel good? And then you just have all that kind of working rhetoric in your head kind of spinning around in there too. So I imagine like for 6 days, like, yeah, it would be hard to fall asleep because you've got all just like stress and anxiety will keep you awake in your day-to-day life when you're out there in an event like this. That's just a constant.
Most definitely. Most definitely. And he, oh gosh, the first two times we tried to crew run together, um, they didn't go too well. He was so concerned, and there was some worry there going on. And we actually laid down for an hour, and it was a 34-hour event. We laid down for an hour and a half. And that nap ended up taking 6 hours. Um, so there was a huge learning curve because he was worried about me and so on. And over time, I think we've really developed a really good crew runner relationship. Even being husband and wife, we are able to separate that aspect of our relationship when we're crewing and running, and remove some of the emotions from it and make it very black and white. Like there was one point in the race. I'd been drinking a pink drink, and it was night 4. And so I thought I had rhabdo, and I'm like freaking out. I've already put in all this time, and I'm going to get pulled from the course. And I'm telling my husband all this, and I'm like, I don't know what I should do because I feel fine. Like everything else feels fine. Like nothing feels like it's shutting down on me. Everything else feels fine. And so we go through all of this stuff together. And then he's like, I bet it's the pink drink. Let's remove that. You keep running. And if it's still, and it was like, it totally
Wow.
was. And everything was great. But he was able to think so clearly in that moment, and just be a crew. And I know as a husband internally, he must have been flipping out. Um, but he was set on the goal too, just like I was, and neither one of us wanted to be removed from the course. So I'm grateful that he's able, and we're both able to kind of separate that aspect, um, of our
Hmm.
relationship when we're out there on going for these things.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of learning that goes into doing things like this before you get to an event like you had in France, where you break the world record and have like such a probably to some degree a career defining experience out there like that. But I mean, for someone like you, I mean, there's the 6 day world record that just happened, but it's not like you're going out here. I think when people think of athletes, a lot of times they think like, oh, well, like a marathoner runs marathons, or like a 5K, 10K person probably kind of gravitates towards those distances. But in ultra running, there is a little bit more diversity of events and things like that. I think what maybe the big question is like, how good can you be at a wide variety of stuff? And you're actually quite good at a wide variety of stuff. Where like I think back to just like Desert Solstice this year, the women's field at Desert Solstice was just amazing. And I mean, just to think of a race that you have multiple people coming down to the last hour where we don't know who's going to be first, second, third, or fourth, essentially in a race like that, where you've been working that hard and then it's that close. Um, yeah. So what is it like even picking events for you? Is it something where you just kind of have an intuition where it's like, I really would like to do this next, and then that's what you decide to go for?
Oh yeah, I pick events based on what I want to do, and whatever I'm drawn to. Um, yeah, I don't put a ton of thought into it. It's just sometimes it's the beautiful location. Sometimes it's the distance of the race. Sometimes it's the possibility, like I had never done a 24. So Desert Solstice was, let's just see what happens at a 24. Um, yeah, it's very random, but it's whatever my heart's drawn to, that's where I'm going.
Does the 24 hour just feel like really short to you now, where it's like, all right, this is going to be like a heightened sense of just urgency versus the like slightly more maybe relaxed approach you'd almost have to have for something as long as 6 days?
Yeah, definitely a different feeling, in the 24. Definitely more urgency, definitely more, maintain that consistent pace. There's a little bit more, um, structure. I feel like I wouldn't say structure because there's structure to the 6 day, but there's a little bit more speed base and a little bit more, less room for error. Let's put it that way in a 24, where in a 6 day you can make a mistake and
Hmm.
make time up later, figure out how to fix that later. But in the 24, I don't feel like there's any room for error.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where I feel like when you get into these longer ultras, it's sort of like a question of when something's going to happen you weren't able to plan for and you're going to have to adapt. And then the longer you go, I think the more comfortable you have to be where there's just too many variables. There's no way you can account for all of them. So you have to be like comfortable enough to know like we're going to respond to things when they happen, but we won't know what they are. And then for someone like you who's done so well at these multi-day things, coming down to 24, I would think would just feel like, all right, I can maybe control a little bit more, or I can account for most of the variables. And then there's just fewer things that you're gonna be able to both get away with not doing, and then also fewer things that could maybe pop up that would potentially derail you that you didn't at least have an idea of being there before you got started.
Correct, correct. And I feel like even in these longer distances, right, the more you do, the more possibilities you're exposed to, and the better you get at troubleshooting.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you also have I guess from my understanding a decision to make in terms of future events because you've done the backyard stuff, the 6 day stuff, the 24-hour. You've done very well at all of them. So you're on the 24-hour team for the women's World 24-hour this fall, but you're also in Big's backyard, which I think are really, really close in a timeline. Have you decided if you're going to do one or the other yet, or are you still trying to make that decision?
They're actually the exact same day.
Oh, are they? Okay, so you do have to make
They're
a
the
decision then.
exact same day, so I'm going to be forced to make a decision. I have thought about it and I haven't made that decision yet. Both are really incredible opportunities. Um, and I thoroughly enjoyed France. So it's going to be a really tough decision to make when it comes down to it. And I think I have a few weeks left until I have to start really, really thinking about which way I'm going to lean.
Yeah. Is it obviously nothing's guaranteed, but is there one between the two where it's like more realistic that you'd be able to do in the future if you, or maybe they both are that way and that makes it hard because it doesn't necessarily make it an easier decision then?
I think the individual years, I mean, are going to get harder and harder to get into at bigs. Um, they have 75 people who can enter. I mean, we just saw the world record drop a few weeks ago. 116 yards is now the standard, the max, the world record for backyards. So I think it's just going to get harder and harder to get into the individual. However, I mean, like I said, 24, you got to be on point the whole time. You have to be on your paces and so on. So I think I could requalify. I don't know. For either, I don't know. So that's the thing. It's going to have to be a roll of the dice and a hope that I can
Might just have
do
to
the
flip a
other
coin.
one. Yeah, yeah, flip a coin and hope that I get to do the other one at some other point in time also.
Just a quick reminder, Maui Nui venison is one of my favorite protein sources. The reason? They have balanced an invasive species, the axis deer, that is devastating to the Maui habitat if not kept in check, all while providing some of the most nutrient-dense meat source you will find. Consider letting them know that you heard of them from me by taking a look at their website at mauinuivenison.com/bitter. You can also check out the full description of how I use Maui Nui venison at the end of the episode.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure that's obviously it's difficult for you, but as a fan, it's like I want to see you do both of them. So it like when you make a decision, I think it's just always going to be there. You'll always have in the back of your mind like maybe a little bit of what if, but also to have opportunities like that is pretty cool to be good enough at both those disciplines to have qualified for that and things like that. So, um, whichever one you do, I'm sure will be a blast and memorable.
Thank you. Yeah, I got some thinking to do for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Megan, it's been awesome to chat with you. I know, like, I do want to make sure before I let you go, the article that they did on your profile on I Run Far was great because I think it highlighted just kind of your unique experience with the sport and just kind of like your trend. I don't want to spoil the article, but at one point you decided to not do a 5K because you didn't think you could do it, and now you're the 6-day world record holder. Do you
Yes.
look back at that and think like what in me changed from the day I didn't want to do the 5K to the day I was wrapping my head around being out there averaging over 100 miles a day for 6 straight days?
I do. I was so afraid of that 5K. I was so afraid of that 5K. I was so afraid of failing. I think is what it boiled down to. I was so afraid of failure. And I think over time, as you have more experience in life and as I've aged, I've just realized that failure is not the be all end all. It's an opportunity to go back to the drawing board and try again. And so as I've gotten older, I've thought, well, people are going to go for this. Why can't I go for this? Why can't I fail and get back up? So it's I don't know. My mindset has changed as I've had more life experiences.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a powerful example of mindset and how that can evolve. I mean, to such an extreme with that too, because obviously, like the amount of things that go into what you did in France versus what most people would assume for a 5K are worlds apart, and if have the same mind kind of shift I mean, just because when you said in the beginning of the beginning of the podcast, we were like, well, I wanted to do 600 in the Pettit Center. It's like that same mind at one point didn't want to risk the 5K, and it grew. It grew to the point where it got so confident and curious, I guess is probably another way to look at it, that it was like, yeah, I think I can do this. And I just think that's really interesting because when people are like trying to decide if they want to kind of take a risk or do something new, and they get that kind of initial like fear or anxiety of like, but what if I fail and things like that. I think your story there is about as powerful as it gets in terms of like making people think, well, I'm going to try it, because if Megan can go from not wanting to do a 5K to running 603 miles in 6 days, then, whatever my hurdle here is going to be pretty trivial at that point if they try to make a comparison.
Yeah, failure is never the be all end all. It's just an opportunity.
Yeah. For sure. And then, yeah, you amass more of those and you figure out like, sometimes the failures teach you so many things. And then you have a day like you did in France. I'm sure you think back to like multiple other events where you're like, had I not done that and failed there, I wouldn't have had the tools to be successful here. So
Yeah.
it's almost like a 180 in how you view it. And that's probably what really drives that mindset change.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to link the I Run Far article into the show notes, listeners, so the listeners can check that one out and dig into the in between of the 5K to the 6 day, if they want to kind of go over and check out our friends at I Run Far, and learn a little bit more about you there. I do also want to give you a chance to share if you have anything you want to plug from like social media or things like that. If you want people to follow you on Instagram and things like that, if you have any websites or channels like that.
Yeah, so I can be found on Instagram at underscore Meg Eckert, and then also on Facebook.
Awesome. I'll also link those into the show notes too. So if any of the listeners want to go and follow along for the next journey.
Yes.
Awesome, Megan. Well, thanks a bunch for taking some time to come on the show. It was an honor to be able to chat with you and hear a little bit more about what it went into everything uh, for breaking the 6-day world record.
Yes, thank you so much, Zach, for having me on.
Thanks for sticking around and listening to how I use the show sponsors. Maui Nui Venison is a product I discovered last year. What caught my eye was their quality and business model. They have paired the need to manage an invasive species with providing some of the most nutrient-dense meat you will find. The axis deer arrived in Maui in single digits but grew fast and have damaged the local ecosystem, and if left unchecked are projected to reach up to 200,000 in number in future years. Maui Nui decided to solve this problem and minimize waste. Axis deer meat provides 43% of your daily value of protein in just 107 calories and boasts a 1.5 to 1 omega 6 to omega 3 ratio, which is the most balanced ratio of any red meat. This same 107 calories provides 22% of your daily value of vitamins and 37% of your daily value of minerals. They have a wide range of products, including ground venison, leg medallions, rib chops, strip loin, loin fillets, and loin chops. They also make a beef stick that includes an option with organ meats, which makes a perfect protein-packed snack that I will usually have in the afternoon before a strength session. I've also been enjoying the ground venison for dinner, usually paired with steamed vegetables or a sweet potato. You can find a bunch of recipes and ways to prepare their products on their website at mauinuivenison.com. Element Electrolytes is my go-to electrolyte supplement. Based on my electrolyte loss rate of 614 milligrams per liter, I begin my day with half a packet of one of their hot beverage flavors with my morning coffee. I rotate through all of them, but my favorite at the moment is the chocolate mint. Later in the day, I have been having either a packet of their watermelon flavor or a can of Element Sparkling, which is their carbonated electrolyte drink. I usually have the black cherry lime or watermelon flavor for those. If you are curious about how to dial in your own fluid and electrolyte setup, check out episode 300 of this podcast, where I dive into some of the things you can do at home to gauge how much fluid and electrolytes you may need. A free sample pack with your first purchase can be found at drinklmnt.com/HPO. Delta G ketones is the best researched exogenous ketone supplement on the market. The research on exogenous ketones is constantly evolving. Delta G is responsible for much of it, hosting 50-plus published studies and 20-plus ongoing studies, and have received DARPA grants designed for special forces. Delta G uses ketone esters, which is unmatched in raising blood ketone levels when matched per gram. The best use case, as the evidence currently stands, is as a post-workout supplement for better recovery and or during longer, lower intensity sessions to help with mental focus. For this reason, I will have a bottle of Delta G Performance, that's the little blue bottle, after my biggest workouts for the week and during long run training sessions once I have been out running for about 45 to 60 minutes. Head over to deltagketones.com and enter BITTER20 for 20% off your next purchase. Currents, which is spelled Curranz, is a pre-workout supplement that I started using this year based on the mounting evidence that has started pointing towards them as being a potential endurance workout supplement that can help move the needle on things like recovery, blood flow, fat oxidation rate, reduce muscle damage, etc. They have 40 plus studies on their website if you want to check those out. The way I use this product is when I wake up in the morning, I usually have a cup of coffee and some electrolytes and just start my day getting hydrated. And while I'm doing that, I'll have a couple capsules of Currents along with that. And then I get out for my first workout. If I'm doing something a little bit longer, like a really long ultra-specific long run or an ultramarathon race or something like that, where I'm going to be out there for multiple hours, I'll usually have another capsule or two every 4 hours while out there doing that. So I'm excited to see what this can possibly do for some of the races I got coming up this year. If you want to check them out and some of the research that they have, head over to currentsusa.com. That's CURRANZUSA.com. And don't forget to plug in the promo code BITTER20DEAL, which will get you 20% off your first purchase. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Human Performance Outliers podcast with Zach Bitter.